those things that where our residents get to truly understand what our council is thinking and what we find important, because based on how we spend our money gives a lot of insight into what we expect. For me, this budget is about service levels for our residents, our business owners, our developers, and all the ratepayers that live and work in Beaumont. Going forward, we need to sort of recognize that we have a myriad of competing interests. We have police, fire, snow clearing, recreation, arts and culture, a growing city workforce that requires infrastructure, a bunch of economic development and art and regional interests that are all impacting our budget, and they're all needing dollars from a finite pot of money. So we need to ensure that we are spending our tax dollars wisely and in the best interest of our citizens as we put all these competing interests together and go forward. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to the CAO to get us started.
And I won't take up anybody else's time. I'm going to hand it over to the very capable hands. There is somebody behind those screens, by the way. Mr. Harris.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for attending. Most important policy decision that council has to make is your budget. But first, I would like to introduce to you all the town's new Director of Finance. He's sitting in the back corner. His name's, if Curtis can stand up, Curtis DeBlanco. If you recognize the name, he's a former CFL football player for Montreal and 1 year in Edmonton. So I brought him here to as my blocking tackle. Though he's sitting in the back, so.
I was going to say, he's sitting in the wrong spot.
Yeah. So there. Also, I have a little video what I'd like to show you guys at the nudging of somebody. It's to start off with a little humor, so I'm just going to drag and drop. And we're going to put it up here, and then we're going to...
Now, about the percentage. I figure 75% to you, Panma, and 25% divided between the 5 of us. Yida, Crowbar, myself, Tom, and the baby. That makes 5% for each one of us.
Billy, you're cheating yourself. If there's 25% divided among the 5 of you, that's 14% apiece.
Oh, no, listen, Pa. I wouldn't cheat you. You know I wouldn't. Now, look here. I'll show you. Let me rub this out here. And now, 25 divided by 5 is 5. You see, 5 won't go into 2, will it? No. But 5 goes into 25 5 times, you see?
No, you're wrong, Billy. Now, I'm a pretty good mathematician. Now, 5 into 25, 5 won't go into 2, will it?
No.
But 5 goes into 5 once. Now, we didn't use the 2 before, so we bring it down here. Now, 5 into 20 goes 4 times. There you are. 5 into 25, 14.
No, look, Pa. Let me prove it to you now by multiplication. 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25.
Really, I'm surprised you're learning.
Huh?
I'm surprised that you're learning. Now I'll show you. 5 times 14 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. 25. That's it.
No. Look, Ma. Look, you're wrong there because I'll prove it to you. We'll put down 5 14s here. 14. There. Now I'll prove to you by addition that 5 14s is not 25. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25. There you are. Better brush up, Billy. I don't want to see you boys cheated.
So, I would say before the profession became CPAs, the CA stands for creative accountant. That's my only joke I have. So before you is the budget package, just so that everyone's aware that the PDF that was sent to you all has 91 pages. The actual budget is 81. So what I'm going to try to refer to is, when we get to the budget, I'll refer to both the PDF and the page number so that we won't lose people, because the budget, once the workshop is done and it's presented, is going to be a standalone thing, and the front end, the preamble, the agenda, the administrative notes won't be part of it. So hopefully I won't lose anyone. So what we'll get forward, first also, I want to thank a staff member who isn't here, my staff, for putting this together. Totally different in the past. It's not a binder, it was a Surlox. Hopefully you found it advantageous, and we're trying to save some money, I guess. Okay. Let's see if I can do this going forward. So the next page. Oh, it's all blank. Now that is interesting. Okay, I'm going to change. That is bizarre. Let's try this again. I opened it up in another program. I don't know why I didn't open it. Here we go. Okay. So, for you is the budget, and then there's the index. So we have the index, agenda, administrative details, the proposed budget, and then next steps. So, in regards to the agenda, it starts today at 5:30, goes to 9 o'clock. It's an approximate timing. The mayor can call for breaks whenever the mayor likes to call for breaks. And then Friday starts at 5:30 again to 9 o'clock, and then Saturday, 8 to 12, that's the projected end of the workshop. Though we have the room till 4 o'clock on Saturday. You're more than welcome. Yes.
We do this by mic, so
No, you do this by mic. You gotta key in if you want to talk. Did I miss something? Oh, did you ask for questions?
And ask for questions.
All right, let's let him finish, and then we'll have questions.
Finish this section.
Finish this session? Oh, yeah.
That there is food available prior to the start, and again, Saturday is a tentative stop. Safety, in regards to safety, there's the closest exit is there, or there, and the muster point is way in the northeast corner of the parking lot. You'll see a nice reddy orange sign should we have to go there. If both doors are on fire, I think we can take the fire extinguisher, we'll put that fire out. If that doesn't work, throw it through the window and we'll be out. So the safety of everyone is important. So proposed budget and 5-year capital plan. So front page, tried to change up the pictures. So on, that will be after, when we go through here, it's the green portion. So we're talking, so it lays out an index on the contents. It does work if you click on, it should work if you click on that, it'll kick you to the appropriate page. We have the first page, or page 3 of 81 is the mayor. And I understand we're getting some new pictures, but once this is complete, there will be his opening remarks will be reflected in this. And some pictures, again, of town. The CAO did not want his picture in, so I just showed a trail. And his comments will come in.
How is that fair?
Yeah, happy trails. So now we'll go through the budget guidelines. So the basis of accounting, the budget is basically comprised of a guide for making financial and operating decisions throughout the fiscal year and meeting the strategic priorities of council. So departmental budgets were developed based on a baseline, including inflationary increases, and has made legal and budgetary comment. and service enhancements to allow the town to maintain the service levels to its residents that they have come to expect. Service enhancements have been budgeted based on council's strategic objectives as well as departmental goals and objectives. So the year-over-year 2018 Consumer Price Index is 2.8%, and that was as of August. So the following guidelines play a vital role in preparing the budget. Again, alignment with the council's strategic plan, maintaining existing service level standards, mitigating future budget impacts, and implementing proactive funding into the baseline budget for infrastructure. So the budget review process, the operating and capital budgets are done, again, on an annual basis, with capital planning being based on a 10-year capital plan that is updated on a yearly basis. In September of each year, the town's operational service maps are updated, and that's in Appendix 2. Those are all the up-to-date service maps. Baseline operating budgets are prepared by each division, with each director reviewing the budget with their respective general manager, looking at the past and current expenditures. Any changes to the baseline budget are presented to the executive team for review. The executive team debates individually each service enhancement to establish the proposed operating budget. As part of the 2019 budget process, budget survey was conducted. And the results of that survey are highlighted in Appendix A. So we can speak to that. So if you go to page, and I'm just going to flip through this really quick. I believe it's 73 of 81. Okay. You can tell I have fun going through this little document. There we go, I'm just about there. Okay, those are the service level maps.
81 of 91 for those that are on the PDF.
Okay. There we go. So I'm going to just make it fit on the page. So basically, a little bit of gobbledygook statistical numbers in the first 3 pages. I guess if you go to page 76 of 81, this is where we start asking the question. So the first question was, how familiar are you with the operating budget? So of the 359 visitors people who have visited the site, 115 engaged in the survey. So 42.1% were very familiar or somewhat familiar with the budget process or the operating budget. The second question was, Beaumont's council is attempting to minimize, so did I go through? Yeah. Attempting to minimize any property tax increase for 2019. What annual tax increase would you support? Based on the responses, 31.9% were in favor of an inflationary increase. 20.4% were in favor of an inflation plus 1% for capital, approximately 3%. Greater than 3%, only 1.8%, and 0 increase at 46. So the majority of the people were in favor of some type of tax increase. The next question was, if you chose to have an increase, where would you like to see this increase? So these are individual responses. So I'll give you the top 5. The top 5 are Parks and Trails with 26, Protective Services with 25, Winter Maintenance with 23, Economic Development with 21, and Roads and Drainage with 20, and then they move throughout. The next one is, if you choose a 0 tax increase, where would you suggest service reductions be made? The top 5 in regards to that is transit at 41, cultural services at 28, childcare at 19, library at 16, and the youth center and aquafit at 14.
Can you define cultural services?
Cultural services would be in regards to, I guess that will be defined under the cultural master plan. So So when that, the arts and plan would be, so.
Okay.
So that was the interpretation of the respondents.
Okay.
Okay?
You didn't define, it's not even a description.
No, there was no description. It just talked cultural. So, and then the next one was indicate the importance of these services. So I'm going to add up the green and yellow because green is very important and yellow is somewhat important. So I ranked them based on the green going down. Fire services had 95 and 17. Municipal enforcement was 70 and 27 responses. Roads was 55 and 47. Winter maintenance was 55 and 50. Sewer and water maintenance was 53 and 48. So you can see each one of those on the graph. The next question was the identified services where there was fee for service, and the question was, would you agree to see a increase in those fees? So the number one increase would be for cultural services, then arenas, sports fields, and then aquafit and recreation programs each got 70 responses. And again, that was, in this case, all 115 responded on this. The next question was investments for infrastructure renewal. Do you support the use of debt to accelerate capital renewal program? 20.2% yes, said yes. 9.6% said no. And then in some cases on large investments only 70.2%. So those were the results of the survey. I have to thank communications, both Shiva and Eden, for the work they did in regards to preparing this report. And if there are any questions, or if you just, well, I believe to hold this through while you're going through the budget as a starting point. Again, 115 out of 359 visitors actually completed the survey.
So any questions on the survey? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Mr. Harris, the question on page 80 of 81 of the hard copy with just the green and yellow bars, can you clarify just what the rest of that question was for me? I didn't, it was please identify for each service whether or not you would
support a fee increase in fees.
Support an increase in fees. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Harris, same question for the next question, or survey question, perhaps I should clarify.
Through Your Worship, the remaining portion of the question, and I will clean that up. This just came out, was sent to me, and it's not a problem. We can fix that up. The question was, do you support the use of debt to accelerate the capital renewal program?
Do you support the use of debt to
accelerate the capital renewal program?
Accelerate capital
yes,
renewal.
So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
We're not going to send this out to anybody public without the complete question, are we?
Well, this has already gone on the website like this. We will update.
Can it be modified so that...
Definitely we'll modify it, yes.
Because I confess when I was reading this, I was puzzling. I wonder what the question actually was.
My apologies for that. We will fix that up, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, now I'm going to have to talk to somebody in regards to getting Adobe on this page because...
Did you want to take 3 minutes and sort that out?
No, that would take longer than 3 minutes to put Adobe on here.
Oh, you don't have Adobe on there at all?
Yeah, no, I don't. And the other one doesn't work. So, in this presentation mode. So I'm just about there. I just like having fun twitching my finger through the budget. Okay, here we go.
It's a great visual for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my apologies.
No worries.
Okay.
So that's something I could study till Alberta before you actually do it.
Okay. All I had to do was get that little tab there. Okay, so
We're on a rabbit hole tonight.
that is, so during council's budget workshop, all members of council will review and deliberate the recommended operating and capital budgets presented. Council may amend the budgets prior to approval. So that's on the next steps, which we'll discuss at the end. This is all based on fund accounting. You have an operating fund, a capital fund, and a utilities fund, specifically 2 or 3 utilities funds, water, sewer, and waste. So on the water and sewer and the waste, they are all funded by utility fees. They're all, the budget is based on a balanced budget coming to zero. There is no taxation collected for water, sewer, or garbage. The operating and the capital funds, the operating fund is outside of grants, and we'll discuss the revenue side, is the taxation side. The capital fund is funded 3 times taxation and grants. Taxation in the sense of the amount of reserves that are set aside every year for capital for future projects. So basically that. And as required by the Municipal Government Act, we have to have a balanced budget. So on page 6 of 81 of the actual budget, attaches the proposed 2019 budget, both operating and capital. And you'll notice that has a balanced budget. You'll notice that for expenditures for capital, current year expenditures for capital are 5.5 million, and operating of $45.7 million, not including reserves or borrowing, which are taxed for. So this is the culmination of everything that we're going to discuss. The next one on page 7 of 81 of the budget. There is the comparison of 2018 to 2019. Please note that the proposed 2019 budget and 2018 figures have been adjusted to reflect the change in the reporting structure, with Human Resources and Safety reporting to the CAO office and Economic Development reporting to Integrated Growth and Infrastructure. And it's just to make a comparison to apples. I should also indicate that in regards to engineering has been reflected under transportation, roads and streets, and technically they fall under planning and development. That adjustment can be made later. So there again, you'll see the percentage increases. So, and we provided some graphs, red and blue. Blue is 2018, red is 2019, so budget revenue comparison and the budget expense comparison. So 20, or I'll leave it at that. Any questions on those?
On the high level?
Yeah, at the high level.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, through to Mr. Harris. I think it might be helpful on the page 7 of 81 there, just to extend the percentages down into the totals on the bottom. It was one of the numbers I hand calculated, or whatever, hand calculated, and I think it would be helpful just to see the revenues and expenses, like the total percents there.
Sure, we can do that. Yep.
Yeah, just
Yep.
drag her down.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Then it just allows you that big picture comparison. Appreciate that.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Mr. Harris, through you, Worship. Love the bar graphs. I think that was pretty much what I asked for last year. To me, that just summarises the whole budget on 2 graphs, one for expenses and one for revenue. The only suggestion I'd make with the presentation of that again, if I may, is on the y-axis, I have to count the number of zeros before I can be sure how big an amount that is. Would it be possible just to label it $1 million and make it 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 or whatever? Would be my only suggestion. But I really like those graphs because it immediately shows us where the big expenses are, where the big revenue is, whether we're up or down, etc., and in a quick visual form.
Yes, I can attempt to change the layout of the graphs to present those little small ones a little better in regards to tying it down. But yes, we can, we can do that. Okay. So on to, oops, we have a question, sorry.
Thank you. Investment income. Just explain to me really quickly how that works again. And does that go back into general revenue? So on page 7 of 81. So 2018, 496. So we're anticipating a 294,000 change. Where does that come from? And are we assuming, does that go straight back into general revenue? How does that work?
Through your worship, to the rest of council. Effectively, what happens is there's $250,000 that goes into general revenue. There is, in this year's budget, I believe it's $209,000 that relates to, I want to say Phase 2, but it's the Beaumont Sports and Recreation, in regards to the borrowing in March to help fund, to reduce the tax impact in 2019 as the debt, recreation debt is falling off in 2019, and that amount will be offset, kind of a deal. So of that number, $250,000 goes into the general operating. $209,000, I believe, off the top of my head, goes to reduce the taxes relating to the Beaumont Sports and Recreation, and the remaining amount is interest earned on reserves. It's an in and out in the calculation, so if you go down below and you see transfer to reserves, that amount of income generated by those reserves are transferred right back into those reserves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions?
Okay. So on operating budget, whoops. So basically we have property, municipalities can do property tax, business improvement area tax, community revitalization levy, special tax, well drilling equipment tax, local improvement tax, community aggregate payment levy, grants, transfers from municipalities, accumulated surplus funds or reserves, and any other source. So our biggest revenue generator is property taxes. In addition to property taxes, we collect taxes or requisitions for the school boards and Leduc Senior Housing Foundation, and also a really small amount that isn't indicated there for a levy on done by the province for assessing specific properties. It's $600, so it's not mentioned in here. So those amounts, those requisition amounts are in and out and are not reflected in this budget. So just so you're aware. So the 2019 budget, proposed budget, has a 2% increase, or $379,300, after factoring in a 3.41% increase in assessment growth. You'll see the chart, which identifies where the assessment growth was and the tax generated from those assessment growths. And the average single house residential, single family residential, so that means the detached home, decreased from $443,432 to $443,052. And that's based on the growth numbers only. Once the final assessment numbers come in February, there will be either an inflation increase or an inflation decrease, which at the end of the day, all it's going to do is change the tax number. It won't change the taxes unless council changes the taxes.
Okay. Quick question. Going back up to the top of the page with all these taxes, we don't really use business taxes, business improvement area taxes, community.
Nope.
Do we know why?
Well, when business taxes aren't, you're allowed to do it, but they're not as popular as they used to be. My dad, when he worked for the city of Edmonton, that's what his job was business taxes, and they phased it out and they put it into property taxes. It becomes an exercise of which property has the higher the rental values in the properties determine what the business tax was. So the city of Edmonton phased it out, God, 20 years ago, I think. I think that's how long my dad's been retired. Well, he's been retired 15 years, so 15 years ago. So those are just taxes that are available. We don't use all those ones. Having said that, we can do a business improvement area tax if you want to put it in Centreville. You can do a local improvement tax if you're looking to upgrade a street and the property owners there and within that area, you tax within that. There are pros and cons to that, and people for and against it. But it is a way you can generate money from taxes.
Oh, fair enough. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Harris, just on that same page, on page 9 of 81, clarification, I'd like us to show the new name of the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation.
Yes. Yep.
And to make the point as well, and if there's an opportunity to spread the word, I want to do that, that Leduc Regional Housing Foundation does not only provide seniors housing. I know the requisition is for seniors housing, but the Place Beauregard is a community housing foundation, a community housing facility that's here in our town. So I want to make sure that we give credit where credit is due there. That's it.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, Mr. Harris. I was trying to decide if I should ask when the bar graphs are here, but when we talk about residential versus non-residential tax, they're lumped into one amount here. Would there be value, in your opinion, of splitting that out into residential versus non-residential? Because one of the conversations we have time after time in this chamber is around the desire to change that. And if we start splitting them out now, then perhaps we will be able to compare in the future. Some thoughts on that, how hard that would be or not?
Through your worship, in the accounting world, it's not hard. We can break it out. Generally, you don't see it broken out in a budget. You see just municipal property taxes, and then in the background, it's broken out. So what I can do is I can look at the presentation, and based on that, I can do a chart almost similar to the GROW, and where you can see the difference from year to year. That's an easy switch. I can make that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, further to that, at some point during the 3 days, and keep it in the back of your mind as we're going through, I'd like council to have a serious look at the impact of freezing the non-residential rate instead of bumping it up. Might be good, might be bad. Go ahead.
Through your worship, in regards to that, the only caution that I would have is are you freezing the rate, or are you freezing the amount of taxes you're generating from that, the non-residential? Because if you freeze the rate, the end result is that residential taxes will go up if you freeze the business tax or the non-residential tax. So you will have an increase in personal or in municipal taxes, assuming you don't change your overall tax burden, right? So if you're collecting $1 million or $100, you're getting $95 from residential and $5 from non-residential, which is effectively what you're getting out of $100.
Yeah.
If you say that, well, we only want to keep that amount, that $5, but now our costs are, and we'll use the Aquafit in there, you have an extra cost of $120 now, and there's only 5. It's not, so your residential owners are going to, property owners are going to pay more. So I realize that you do that. I just want to express that thing.
I guess in a clunky sort of way, I'm trying to, there was a bar chart floating around with basically non-residential tax rates around the region, and it would be nice to be a little more competitive. And so by freezing, I understand that our costs are the same, and we may have to put, and that's the philosophical question that council will have to decide, is that, yeah, our revenues need to stay where they are, so there might be a little more tax increase for residents. It's a discussion worth having, because if we're trying to spur business growth and economic development within our town and support the businesses that are here, I think it's a discussion worth having and what that overall impact might be.
And to your worship, I haven't seen that analysis, but I know when we did it 2 years ago, of the 13 that we compared to, we were on the lower end of the tax rates in the region. Of the 13 compared, we were at the bottom end, not at the top end. Now, that's on the commercial side or the non-residential side. On the residential side, we were at the top end. So that is a hard decision that council is going to have to make, is that by reducing that commercial side even more, you're going to increase that non-residential or the residential tax even higher than what it is, which would mean that if you want to keep it down, you would seriously have to look at the services you provide and reducing services to keep it within the costs that you have. So that is council has that prerogative to do. I just want to caution council that when you do one thing to one, you're going to impact the other, and you have those, each side of the coin wanting to pay less.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I haven't really made a decision in my own mind one way or the other without having a look at what those impacts might be. But I think it's worth a discussion. Councilor Mungo.
Yeah, definitely think it's worth a discussion. A process question. This going to be, we've all got our own crazy ideas, and the mayor just threw one out. What's the process for when do we bring these out? So last year we kind of went through the budget and at your pace through basically page 1 to page 81, and that made sense. When should we be providing our own input, so things that you haven't provided but crazy ideas in our head, when should we bring those forward? Is it appropriate when we go through kind of GM by GM? Is that how you prefer? I'm just trying to get a sense of what's the right way to do this.
Okay. Through your worship. So I'm going to say that I'm going to answer your question first, and then I'm going to make a comment. So my preference is as we go in GM through GM and make those things. My comment's going to be is that this budget is based already on council's strategic plan, which you guys just did in May. And I understand that there are quarterly meetings, and that's the process where ideas should be brought up during those to allow staff the ability to work and figure it into the budget as to the direction you're going. So there's nothing stopping, and that's my comment, there's nothing stopping from council from bringing up ideas at this time to incorporate into the plan. But from a budgeting process position, bringing them right now at the last minute, a month and a half before it has to be adopted, does put a lot of pressure on staff to come up with changes. For me, I just change a number and it gets done. But the process of trying to say that we want to add such and such, and then it's where are you going to allow for a tax increase? There's already a 2% increase in the budget. Are you going to allow for the tax increase, or are you going to say cut the taxes? And then it's where do you cut those taxes, or do you want to reduce reserves, which will then have an impact on your capital financing program? So from a process perspective, I'm okay if you ask those questions right now. My preference, and I believe the CAO can speak to this, and is that is the reason for the strategic planning. This is all theoretically based on the strategic plan, and quarterly meetings have been structured for council to bring where we are in a process and to bring comments. And again, it's nothing new in regards to making the changes now or whatever. I've been doing this for 20-some years, and it's consistent with throughout councils. But I've also been in councils where they only do it based on the strategic plan. Once it's done, that's where the budget is, and then they move on, and then they review it on a yearly basis, and if there's any changes. But if the CAO wants to speak, I'll be quiet.
Yes, thank you. Just to summarize then, of course, there's a number of vehicles throughout the year where we can bring ideas forward. But this is also one of those opportunities. And if you have an idea and it's got legs with council, 4-3, then, as Mr. Harris said, we will go back and we will make those adjustments. So I think the preference I heard is as we go through each division, that if there's something in community and protective services, I think that would be orderly. And fire it out on the table, let's debate it. If it gets legs, then we'll go back to the drawing board and see what the impact is.
And just to add, I completely respect the comment. I would appreciate, we'll set some structure around this. We've only had one of these quarterly meetings. I would appreciate, going forward, even if we can pull out some of that. Like, I know there are some things that we looked at in that quarterly meeting that I didn't see in here, so I'm not quite sure how that balance works. So to your point, certainly not looking to surprise. We haven't been holding this back. We've been talking about these things for a while, but if we haven't seen them in here, when is the right time to do it? You answered my question, and thank you, CAO, for the additional comments.
Continuing on.
All right. I will make those changes as requested. Now, in regards to what does a 1%, 2%, 3%, all the way to 7% tax increase result in? A 1% base, including the growth, is effectively $189,600, and then it goes. Our budget is done per $100. So there is rounding that is involved in that. The impact of a 1% increase on a household monthly is $2.31. So basically, a bottle of Coke a month. And then you go from there. And from non-residential properties, you're looking at $8.90. That's the rate. At 0%, it's at $8.81. 1% is $8.90. So basically 0.09 cents per thousand for a 1% tax increase. Below is just a summary of over the years. So you see where we're at and the tax increase and so forth. And residential assessments. Utility fees. So next to property taxes, utility fees are the largest source of income that we generate. There's water, sewer, and curbside. Over the past, at least since I've been here, the base fee or the flat fee for water and sewer has not changed. Basically what that does is it gets you your water to you and your sewage away from you, and that's whether you turn a tap on or not. That infrastructure has to be there, and you need to fund that. When you turn the tap on, we get charged by both commissions for water coming and water going. It's based on the sewer commission or wastewater commission bases it on the water that the water commission sends to us, not the actual amount that they treat. They are looking at that, and these costs may change, and we'll probably need to do some infrastructure programs to deal with water infiltration into the sewer system. But the only increases that we've done, again, in the last 5 years, last 6 years, have been the rate increases suggested by the commissions. So from the Water Commission this year, they're suggesting a 12-cent increase, and the Sewer Commission is suggesting or requesting a 5% increase based on the preliminary numbers that we have to date. So basically, from a water perspective, based on actual consumption, that's a $24.75, $24.76 increase on average, and for sewer, it's $10.32.
Just to be clear in my own mind, they're not really requesting it. That's what they're going to charge us, right?
Well, that's their budgeted estimate, yes. It may go a cent up or a cent down.
We have no control over it, so just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware.
Yes, we have one vote, and
it is what it is.
Yeah. In regards to curbside collection, we've held the rate at the same rate as 2018, at $24.24 a month, or $290.88 in a year. I see a question to
Yeah,
my...
there's two.
Okay.
Councillor Van Nukert, followed by Councillor Danluck.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, through to Mr. Harris. Very happy that the bottom rate of 24 per month has been held based on the level of service that we've had that I personally believe is subpar. Do we know what or are we able to share the current contract term with that provider relative to when we would expect an up or down change in that amount? If you don't have the answer off the top of your head, that's entirely fine. Maybe you could just bring it back after.
Through Your Worship, I have somebody in the background who will tell me whether I'm wrong. It will come up in September of 2020. I believe that's the correct one. In regards to your concern about service levels, I can say that integrated growth and infrastructure is looking at that, and the budget reflects that investigation that they're doing. So depending on what comes out of that, there may be a decrease or there may be an increase in those rates.
Fair enough. Thank you. CO? Sorry, I hit Bill.
It's okay, it happens to me all the time at home when they ask me to speak and then they don't let me speak. Just further to what Mr. Harris is adding around the performance of our waste collection, there's been a lot of work that's been done in the last 6 months, and I'm not sure when the last complaint we had, but I think we're like one in the last 30 days, and that's been done, as Mr. Harris said, by some due diligence on the part of Ms. Lewin's staff, and through a series of significant fines and levying the options that we have in our contract, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Danluck, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, thank you, Worship, not a problem. Mr. Harris, just a quick question on the curbside collection being held at $24.24 per month per household. How do we account for apartments? How do we do the collection for apartment buildings that have 20 units in it, or 15 or 18 or something? I'm just curious how we do that.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Danluck, and again, I will be corrected if I'm wrong by Ms. Mohammed, we don't do apartments.
Okay, so
Apartments are generally not within the guide. We're looking at providing services to apartments, but these are, generally speaking, single-family residential. And if we get into apartments, that is, I know they're looking at it, but we haven't, I believe, formalized how those are charged. In regards to townhomes, there might be one or two that are on it. But generally speaking, that's their responsibility within their condo association for the collection there.
thank you.
Okay, see no further questions. Carrying on.
So you'll see the utilities and the increases. So user fees. So before you are the changes suggested in the to the 2018 user fees. I'll go through. I haven't provided every single one. I've just provided you with the suggested changes. So with planning and development, Schedule 5, Section A, reduced condominium subdivision fee from $41 to $40 per unit to meet condo regulations. In regards to Schedule 5, Section C, removed the reissuance of an expired permit fee and added to the fees $750 a day occupancy fee at the discretion of the safety codes officer. So where that is a stop work order was issued and you lived in it, there's a currently a $750 fee a day. What this does is leaves some discretion with the safety codes officer as to whether the full fee or a portion of that fee would be charged. Childcare program fees were increased by 2%. Protective services, increase of permit to display fireworks, high hazard to 100 from 50, increase administrative fees from 15 to 20%, and that's to be consistent throughout all our fees. Added a new fee of $1,200 plus the cost of the disposal plus the 20% for fire responses involving dangerous goods, overpacked drum, and 30 gallon with contents. So basically all these new fees with the fire department is we're being proactive in regards to recovering for the work that is done in those situations where due diligence wasn't observed. So there's an add a new fee of $900 plus cost of disposal for dangerous goods overpacked using a 20-gallon drum. Added a new fee for $140 an hour or portion thereof for municipal enforcement officer responses with a patrol vehicle. Added a new fee at $65 an hour or portion thereof for municipal enforcement officer response only. And added a new fee of $75 per hour or portion thereof for municipal enforcement patrol vehicle only. Parks and Recreation. So pool. My apologies, I will update to show that which Parks and Recreation, what 9 and 10 are. So the first one relates to the pool. Reduced all pool-related fees, membership, daily admissions, birthday party bookings, 1 hour in the pool, and so forth, by 20%, and eliminated the 3-month and annual passes along with the membership incentive dates. That is because of the construction going on currently at the Aquafit. Eliminated the fees for the multi-purpose meeting room, the playtime program, fitness time, or team training sessions, again, because of the construction. Added a non-prime time lane rental of $11.55 per hour per lane, consistent with the family swim night fee. Held the prices on aquatic program fees at 2018 prices. Held youth center fees at 2018 prices. Added a daily fee for football and soccer fields of $168 per day for adults and $61.50 or $20.50 per game for youth. Added a per diamond fee per game or day of $26 and $79 for adults, plus a new rate of $100 per team between August 16th and September 30th. Added a per diamond fee per game or day of $18 and $54 for youth, plus a $75 fee per rally cap or rookie team. Increased Canico ice fees starting August 1st, 2019 by 3%. Increased Canico non-ice fees starting August 1st, 2019 by 3%. And finally, increased CCBCC fees by 3%.
Okay, so I know there's going to be some questions on fees. The complete schedules are going to come as part of a bylaw. That will, first reading will be the last meeting in November, and second and third reading or approval will be at the time you approve your budget. Okay, and so I got a couple questions. Going back to page 11 of 81, add to the $750 a day occupancy. I'm a little uncomfortable with at the discretion of the safety codes officer. That puts him in a bad position of having to levy the fine or not, when realistically we just wanted to make the decision on whether or not the place was occupiable. I think whether or not and I'll be looking for some input from Ms. Mohammed and the CAO on this. I'm thinking that it would be better to have a manager levy in the fee. That way it leaves him as an impartial observer. It either is or it isn't occupiable, and leaves it in the hands of management as to whether or not that fee gets levied. Can I get some input? CAO?
Yes, Your Worship, members of council, we had identified the safety codes as the authority, as the person who would make that call. But the system you're suggesting will work just as well. The person can advise the manager and that decision can be made.
Okay. Is there support from council to make that change? Discussion on the motion? We're good? All in favor? Hands? Okay. Can we make that change?
Yes.
And then in the Aquafit Center, the multi-purpose meeting room, that's that one downstairs off the thing. Why are we closing that if we're removing the fee? Mr. Hiltz.
That room will become the new entrance and kiosk.
I thought that was the child.
Yeah, but that whole area will become where they're going to be doing the entrance is going to be moved there. That's where all the offices and everything are going to be moved back in that area and stuff like that. So where the staff are going to be. So those rooms both go.
So they're taking both those rooms?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the update. Oh, appreciate that. Questions from council? Councillor Moncaswing.
Thank you, Your Worship. So acknowledging that we've still got to go through the bylaw that's coming before us, but obviously does have a budget impact. So I got 3 questions. I'll go in reverse order. Sorry, starting with the Ken Nickel and the CCBCC, we're adding 3%. Just sounds like we did it last year, do it again this year. Like, what's the value? Like, what are we doing differently? What service? How are we showing that we're giving them 3% better service? Or where does that 3% come from?
Through Your Worship, to council, effectively, when you look at the cost of inflation, which is 2.8%, the 3% is an appropriate fee for an increase. The way the wage structure within the town works, the majority of those costs are wages. Also, the building, when it comes to the Ken Nickel, is aging and the maintenance increases. So those fees offset those costs. So that's why the 3%.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, the non-prime swim rental. Do we define non-prime? Do we have a time? Do we engage with that group, or what that looks like in terms of, after 6 p.m. or whatever? Do we have that defined?
Through Your Worship, yes, we have that defined.
Okay.
I don't know if Kerry knows it right off the top of the head.
I don't need it. I just need to know it's defined.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
And then we had a discussion about childcare on Monday. When do we have the conversation here about cost recovery and that sort of thing? So you're looking at a 2% here. Is this the right place to have that conversation?
I would have that conversation as part of when we get into that area.
Yeah, I was going to say.
On family services and so forth, once we're in the community and protective services, looking at that area.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Danlock.
Sorry, Your Worship. My question was just asked by Councillor Moncalves-Swain, so I didn't have a chance to push my button before you gave me the mic, so sorry.
No worries. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, but through Your Worship to Mr. Harris. Starting in the protective services there, we got the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, the bottom 5, the addition of the new fees of $1,200, $900, $140, then the hourlies there. Are those new? Where do they come from? Are they new fees? Are we looking to solve an issue here with an issue we've had that we haven't been able to recoup fees on, or is it just a gap that's been identified as we review the needs, the service requirement, and funding for those types of services?
Through Your Worship, the council, it's identifying the gap. So with our new, director of protective services, which was a former fire chief, and our new supervisor of CPOs. They have gotten together and they've looked at the services that we provide, and in regards to where fees should be charged for services and so forth. So this is identifying areas to properly fund both CPOs and the fire department, yes.
One more? Sure. Just near the bottom, I have, I guess, more discussion to come from me on when we get there in council in November, but just a question for today here around the last 2 bullets on the page 11, just around the daily fee for soccer fields and the per diamond fee. Are these new fees, or are they just increased fees?
They're a combination of both. It's also identifying different times. So I know that in regards to the August to September fees, those fees weren't identified. I can, and the GM can correct me if I'm wrong, this is identifying or trying to address an issue where bookings are done creatively such that they aren't paying fees for the use of the fields. So the user groups have gotten creative in regards to how they book things, and the town isn't recouping the cost based on the intended use of the fees that were previously set up.
Mr. Hills.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. In the past, so up to through 2017, we charged hourly and daily fees for the use of the diamonds and the fields and things like that. Last year, at the request of the user groups who went to these per team fees, and that's what the user groups wanted. Now they want some more flexibility again, where they can go back to some hourly fees and use team fees, and there's going to be a combination of everything there. So we're trying to work with them and try to come up with something that works for the different groups.
Follow?
Follow, sure.
Thank you. That's exactly where I was going. I was hoping that, these proposed were in conjunction with conversations with the group. So thank you for that answer.
Fair enough. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Harris, I'm looking at page 7. I'm looking at page 7. Yeah, you would know if I am or I'm not. I'm looking at page 7 of 81 and where it says user fees and sale of goods. And is that where I would look for where all of those user fees, that's essentially on the budget, the $10 million there, that's the revenue that we receive?
That is partially correct, because there are some fees that fall into other areas, yes, but that is correct.
That would be the account?
That's the majority of them, yes.
Okay, and the percentage change, 1.26, so was there some across the board for the ones that haven't changed, or there's no new ones? Is there an across-the-board increase for all fees?
No, there's not across the board increase for all fees. Also, some of the fee increases are offset on projected fee loss or decreases because of the construction of the new aquafit.
Yeah, so there's some decreases.
Yes,
as well.
yeah.
Okay, it's just quite obvious that there's a heavy reliance on fees, in our budget. Just $10 million is a big amount of money.
Through worship, yes. And then, through your worship, and again, the majority of those fees are water, sewer, and garbage in that.
I'm okay with fees because people can manage. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. To Mr. Harris, on Schedule 7, we've got a childcare programme fee increase of 2%, and then on Schedules 11 and 12, we have increased KNRRC fees of 3%. Why the difference, given that price inflation, we've already been quoted at 2.8%?
So in regards to the childcare fees, what has been done and continues to be done, and it's even consistent with the Ken Nico fees. Childcare fees, they look at it from a market perspective also. They look at where they are in providing this service compared to what similar daycares charge. Now, there may be an argument in regards to what similar daycares are, but what they do is they look at the fee in a competitive basis, and it's based on the 2%. In regards to Ken Nico, it is, again, that's more on an inflation one. They across the board, the aquafit in the past has been, fees have been compared to Leduc, Millwoods, and now it will be compared to the Metals, which is one of the closer ones. So depending on the different area will determine how they adjust the fees, but that's the reason. It's two different approaches of looking at fees. In regards to the Ken Nico, again, it's been a constant 3% to try to deal with inflationary cost increases, and I believe our fees, when it comes to our arena and our arena, is not as high as other comparable arenas. And again, I can be corrected if I'm wrong by the general manager, but that's the reason. Each division looks at their fees separately to meet their needs.
So there's different calculation?
Yes, for each one.
And there isn't really a competitor ice rink in town, is there? Whereas there may be a competitor.
Again, through your worship, and just saying that technically there is not a competitive within town. Having said that, if I understand correctly, there are arenas out there in the close by that are not fully booked that I believe are not as high a fee. If people want to travel, they can take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello, thank you, Your Worship, through to Mr. Harris and perhaps Mr. Hiltz. it just occurred to me, the 20%, just wanted to do a little bit of math here. We recently had a presentation from one of the user groups in town, which was Triton Swimming, and they presented a bar graph comparing costs for lane hours and such, and we saw that Beaumont was on the high end for that. Math, I know one of the asks in that presentation would definitely be satisfied by the considering the cost, what is it, timing specific costs for the non-desired, less desired, or what do they call it, non-prime time lane rental. That one seems to be, I think, acknowledging that. But when it comes to the 20% off of our fee for the prime time rentals, does that bring us down to be competitive with Leduc if we were to replot that bar graph that they presented?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Van Newkirk. Are you talking about the 1155 number?
Yeah, 1155. And so our current prime rate minus 20%.
Yeah, it's actually that's a minus 30% of what it is exact. So that 1155 is minus 30%. So Leduc's, we're about 60, I think 60 cents higher than Leduc's, based on what our going in rates were at.
For prime or non-prime?
For both. So basically, they've dropped theirs by 30% and ours are dropped by 30%. So it's basically, there's about a 60 cents difference.
Okay. It's fine for now. I'm going to dig a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Last question that I have before moving on is a little while back, there were some user groups that were having, we used to have a half-day rate at the CCBCC, and we went from a full day and hourly, it essentially doubled their, have we solved that problem for them? Mr. Hiltz?
Yes, it has been looked at, Your Worship, and I believe that when you get the package of fees and charges, it is there.
Awesome, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, Mr. Harris, we will do transfers from governments, and then we'll take 5.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item, and I'll try to blow it up a little bigger on the screen for everyone to see. These are government transfers and grants. They're listed from lowest to highest. There's 3.174500. Normally, the federal gas tax for the BSRC would be a capital one, but council has requested it to fund the debt payments, which will then brings it to the operating side. But you can do that. It's just normally you would have seen it in your capital budget. So there go from the Volunteer Appreciation Canada Day Canada Summer Jobs, the Leduc County grant for the library, the Yellowhead Regional Library allotment for the library, a grant for a traffic counter for engineering, county share cost share grant for the library, 50th Street grant upgrade of traffic signals for engineering, internships grants, CARES grant for economic development, ASP, CARES grant for economic development for coal work leaseholds, the provincial grant of 98.5, new hires, Alberta Solicitor General policing of 100,000, CARES grant for long range planning of 127,000, MSI operating grant for policing of 127.3, child staff incentive allowance of 267, county cost share for recreation, the municipal policing grant of 363, FCSS provincial grant, and finally, where I started was a federal gas tax of 3.1745. Noting that in regards to the MSI grant, it's only good to 2020. The 2 policing grants are only good till 2020, depending on the new government. They may or may not be here going forward. Your 5-year or your financial plan, which is a requirement by the province to have adopted this year. So it's our 5-year operating. They have been reflected on the assumption that the grants continue. If they don't, then either tax increases or savings from other areas will have to be identified.
So we need a solid fiscal framework from the Alberta government, that's what you're telling me.
Yes.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship. 2 areas I wanted to ask questions on. One was the library. Mr. Harris, you know how we've gone back and forth with the library just to make sure that the accounting is kept according to the expectations for the library being a separate entity where the town does the bookkeeping and there's payment made back and forth. So why do the library county grants, first of all, why are there two? Because I thought there was only one. And why are they showing in the town's budget? I mean, to me, it's an accounting thing, but I'm just curious.
Through your worship to the rest of council, at the end of the day, irrespective that the library is set up, the town, or soon to be city, established the library. Technically, under the Library Act, you cannot disband of the library. Having said that, the town totally controls their budget. So if the town only wanted to provide them $1, you could provide them $1. There's nothing stopping from the town from doing that.
The council.
That is where the, when you talk about accounting and the guidelines required by, I guess, the people who set out my profession, the library doesn't exist without the town, and therefore you have to show it in the budget of the town.
So from an auditing perspective, this is
No,
how...
from a Canadian
Accounting.
standards perspective, not from an auditing perspective, from a Canadian standards. It's like it's a wholly owned subsidiary, even though it's under a different act, because you could totally control the amount of money that goes into that library. Without the town, they do not exist.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah, okay.
I understand that
So
the
now-
council
yeah.
can say yes or no to
That's
the
right.
amount, but not where it goes within the budget.
Yes and no. You can say where it goes. You control their budget.
Okay, you have
technically-
this debate later, but
Yeah, I
we've
know.
read the act and we've had people from the province come and talk to us.
Yep.
Maybe Councillor Stout may or may not want to chime in here, but that's, I'm not concerned about where the money is going,
Yeah.
just how it's being presented here.
Okay, so in
Why are
regards-
there two county shares?
Yeah, so in regards to why there's two county shares is because the library gets a grant directly from the Leduc County. And the library gets a allotment directly from the Yellowhead Regional Library. So the
one of these is
library, that portion of the library, there's two portions of the library. There is the library, and then there's the library building. The library does not own the building, and so the library runs as its own entity. So they collect a Leduc County grant, they collect a Yellowhead Regional Library allotment, and they get a grant from the town. What the town does then, based on that grant, such that the library doesn't go bankrupt, comes over into the town's books. Then the town calculates the amount of taxes based on the amount that we provide to the library and then the amount that's needed to run the building. So when in that portion of running the building that's where the county cost share grant comes into.
So we can cost share, the library can, and the town can.
That is
Both
correct.
ways.
Yeah.
That's good. Leaving the library, going to the FCSS provincial grant.
Yep.
This amount, 4057, is different than the amount shown on page 25 in here.
A 4077?
Yeah, this one is 405 and the other one is 407. Is it just
That's
the
right,
numbers are reversed, or?
No, that's $2,000 from other income.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a general question and two specific ones, and they're both short ones. Mr. Harris, so all these various grants, I know some of them, but do we have to apply for these grants annually from the administration, or grants are automatically done on an agreement for various years for some of these grants? Just give me a quick idea of how much work involved with these grants.
The big one, the federal gas tax, you have to apply.
Right.
Based on the project. You have to meet reporting, you have to apply for any of the MSI grants. Even though they allocate money to you, you still have to apply for it. You don't automatically get it. The internships grants, you have to apply. The CARES grants, you have to apply. The 50th Street grant is a grant previously received by the town for both capital and operating of 50th Street. The county cost share is a grant that is on a year-by-year basis. It used to be a agreement to that, but since I've been here, it's been on a year-by-year basis. And we are working, I guess, right now with the county to shore that up. So the Canada Day grant, you have to apply. So 95% of them you have to apply.
Okay, thank you. Two quick questions then. 4 from the bottom, county cost share recreation. Is that from Leduc County?
Yes.
Okay. Can we indicate Leduc County on there when we're doing the redoing?
Sure.
Just so we can identify where that's coming from. I think Leduc County would appreciate, plus us too, knowing where Leduc is contributing to our municipality. And right above that, the child care staff incentive allowance. Can you tell me what that is, please, and how it's used or where it goes?
That allowance grant is a grant based on subsidy for wages, based on the level of the child care person. So if they have a level 3, we get a subsidy of so much. If it's a level 2, we get a subsidy of so much. And if it's a level 1, we get a subsidy of so much.
So that money, it basically goes into the...
It goes specifically right into child care.
Right into child care.
Yep.
We still have a deficit still. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm good now.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Way to throw that last comment in there. All right. If there are no no further questions, do you have a couple of concluding comments on this section, or we're going to take 5?
We can take 5.
Then let's take 5. All right. Reconvene the meeting. And pick right back up at investment income. Mr. Harris.
Through your worship. I guess further to the initial discussions on investment income, effectively there's $250,000 that has been budgeted into operating, which is consistent with prior years, and then there is an additional amount budgeted in relationship to the Beaumont Sports and Recreation Center, which goes to offset the increased taxes for that, and then the remaining amount relates to reserves. So that is adjusted as an in and out through the reserves. Penalties and cost of taxes. These are the current penalties or late fees, interest charged on property taxes, and they've been consistent for well before I began. For utility bills not paid by the due date, they are charged an additional 2.6%, and if not paid within 120 days, are transferred to taxes. Franchise fees. So the town has 2 franchise agreements, one with Fortis Alberta and one with Alta Gas. They generate, if you see by the schedule, projected for 2019 is $373,868 for electricity and $1,198,066 for gas. The rates are at 5% for electricity and 21.2% for gas. Electricity can go up to 20%, which means that for every percent that's added, that's an additional $74,800 in revenue. And for gas, it can go up to 35%, and that is for every additional 1% based on current fees that are charged for electricity and gas. That's a caveat, is $56,500. It should be noted that if both utilities like to have that information prior to November 1st, if council decides to make any increases here, those impacts will not be felt until partway during the year. So those won't be a full impact in a year if you choose to increase those fees. There's a question.
Yeah, there is. A couple, actually. Quick question. When is the last time we adjusted these franchise fees? Like, how long has it been established?
They've been consistent since they were implemented.
So 15, 20 years?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah. They've been they haven't changed. What has changed in the electricity and gas market is that the electricity fees and gas charges to residents have gone down. Therefore, the amount that we generate, even though we have a growth in there, is not as high as if it would have been, when you look at gas, that was at one time, $8 compared to $3 right now, so we're not generating the same amount of income. But in the same breath, transmission fees are where the electricity and gas companies are making their money, not on the commodity.
So are the franchise fees, everybody knows you got the variable costs in your bill and your fixed costs. What part is the franchise fee?
Variable.
It's just on the variable?
Yes.
And variable's going down?
Well, it had. Natural gas right now is going, between $2.70 and $3.10, depends on the day. And electricity have gone down. It's anticipated, even in our forward marketing, that we've purchased gas and electricity on a forward market, and those costs have actually gone down. So we will see savings going into the future based on the contracts that we have entered. So they're not anticipated to go up.
So we could actually see loss of revenue here, is what you're telling me?
The potential is yes, if growth doesn't continue, yes.
Interesting. Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Harris, so can you tell us, for example, in your experience or your access information, are other municipalities like ours charged the same or has had the same franchise fee? Like, for example, would Devon have the same 5% and 21.2, or are we different than our neighbors?
We are different than our neighbors. If you just give me half a second here,
Do we get more?
CEO, you had a comment or wanted to make one? Or no?
Sorry, I hit the button. My hand's just over the button.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I will open it up 1 second and we'll see if I give you an example. Where are we? Oh, again, that's not a touch screen.
In the same breath, while you're looking it up, could you explain why we wouldn't look at increasing these?
That's my next question. Why wouldn't we? Yeah, exactly.
I guess the bigger question is this a good time to have this discussion, or is there a portion later in the program?
Yeah, I don't know. I've got no background in this at all. I mean, it looks like generating revenue for like, why wouldn't we? So people who are smarter than me, tell me.
This would be the time to discuss it, if you wish to discuss it.
CEO?
Yeah, I was actually waiting to see what the questions were, and they're exactly on the line of something that administration would toss out on the table. As Mr. Harris said, there's a process for getting these fees increased. He's going to pull the exact data up. Off the top of my head, I'm going to tell you we're low, considerably lower than other municipalities. We could move our franchise fees, each of them, up 15 percentage points, and that would total $1.9 million. So there is money there that is being left on the table. Be perfectly frank, it's the user pay. It's often described as a hidden tax. I'm not pretending that it's anything else, but there is some revenue opportunity there in both gas and electricity. Where I was going with this is if there's an appetite by this council to explore that, we would appreciate that direction. We've set 2019 to leave it at 5%. We can change that. But as Mr. Harris says, it will take some time before we actually see the change. But if there is an appetite by this council, we could start that process now and be prepared for 2020 or 21. But I think it's an interesting conversation that council needs to have. Thank you.
Okay. So, I'm sorry. So this is electricity. You'll note that Beaumont is at 5%, but if you were to look at Chestermere is 11.5, which is theoretically our sister city. You were to look at Leduc. Where's Leduc? Leduc is at 16%. You look at Devon's at 13%. So right now we're at 5%. We're well below any of those rates on the electricity. Whoops. That's not it.
So Airdrie was 16 on there.
Sorry, what?
Airdrie, I thought we saw 16 on there.
Airdrie is, Airdrie is at 15%.
Or 15, pardon me. So we're at 5.
Yep.
With Fortis.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess, I know we discussed this last year at budget, and I don't remember the conversation, it's like a year ago already, about this. They talked and we decided to leave it as it is, but I honestly don't see any reason why we couldn't, based on this information here, especially seeing sister municipalities that are considerably higher than we are, I can't see any downside for us applying You mentioned for item number 1, you mentioned, Mr. Harris, for 2019 to put forth an increase on Fortis and Alta Gas.
Well, it's thoughts. Yeah, thoughts. Councillor Hendricks, you're next.
Your Worship, thank you, and certainly this has been a hot topic with every council that I've been involved with, and certainly the issue is always, well, it's just a transfer right back to the user, and your tax really for this end, and the utility company just puts it on the bill, in essence, with the user. So then the argument's been, well, it's really a tax, so if you need it, you take it, but if you don't need it, why would you take it? So that's kind of where the question generally finds itself in all the various budget deliberations I've been in. So.
And so my next question would be: does the revenue that it's generated from, would that go back into general revenues, or does that go back into utilities?
No, through your worship, no, this is all general revenue taxation. It doesn't go into the utility ones, because that's just water, sewer, and wastewater. So this is seen as a general taxation.
Okay. And just to get back to timeline, we're figuring implementation. We have to have the discussion now for 2020 implementation. Is that what I heard?
No. Generally speaking, what they like to have is a resolution passed by council, and the whole process for them to receive it by November 1st to have it kick in at the beginning of the year. If we do it, council agrees to make the changes, what we can do is come forward with a resolution for council to approve the change. It can be done before you even approve the budget, and get the paperwork in as soon as possible. And my understanding is it will be either April implementation or a June implementation. It won't be at the beginning of the year. So you won't get the full impact this year. You'll see the full impact going forward.
Fair enough. Councillor Stout, your question or comment?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, to Mr. Harris. Did I hear you say we were also at the bottom end of the range? You've shown us the electricity fees. Does that also apply to the franchise fees? Does it also apply to the natural gas ones? You don't need to show them to me. I just want to know where we stand.
We're in the middle of the range for natural gas. We're at 21.1. When you look at the city of Edmonton, is at 32.9. Trying to look at Sherwood Park is at 22%. Where's Leduc on here? Quickly. Yeah, Leduc's, because there's two sets of riders. I've got the one of the two riders that are there. But yeah, we're at the upper end of the gas, but we're not at the top end.
So there'd be more scope for an increase on the electricity one. If our concern was to remain competitive with other municipalities.
Where you make, well, as you see, with 1% increase in electricity generates 75,000, whereas a 1% increase in gas is only about 57,000. So where you want to really increase, if you're looking to increase, is on the electrical. And you can go, like I said, you can go up to 20%. So that would be a 15% increase on...
if we went the full.
On the full, yeah. And that would generate over $1 million.
So personally, I'd like to have the conversation.
Yes.
I'd rather do it now than we can give direction, and it's either yay or nay, but I'd rather have that now, and so that we can implement it for 2019 if we want to do it.
Yeah, no, we'll have the discussion now. So need some thoughts, because yeah, if we go all the way, just looking at electricity, if we go all the way up to 20%, like all the way to 20, which I'm not recommending because we way at the top, that's $1.1 million. 74.8. If we go to 10 to match the Duke, sorry, it's like 350.
And 74,000.
Councillor Barnhart, thoughts?
Thank you, Your Worship. My first thought is I don't think we're at a point where we need to do it this way. Similar to what Councillor Hendricks has said, if there's a dire need to do this and we somehow don't want to put it on our tax roll and instead do it through this mechanism. I just want to clarify, if we did increase the rate, that gets sent to the distributors or whoever provides the electricity and the gas, and it's up to them to put it on the bill for the consumer, or is it an automatic, it just flows right through and it shows up on our utility bill?
Through your worship, it doesn't show up on our utility bills.
Personally,
Processes, advertising, it has to go to the utility commission, and then it goes through the individual, your individual electricity bill or gas bill. If you have a combined bill, you'll see both.
That's what I mean, it comes on mine, not
Your
council's.
personal, yeah, not council, yeah.
We see the franchise fee on our
Yes.
bill,
Yes,
and it's going to, depending on what happens here, could go up
yes.
a little bit or a lot.
Yeah,
And then that money, essentially, the providers of the electricity and the gas, they don't lose anything. They just change the numbers and what they collect, and then they
That's
give
correct.
us the money. They give council, the town, the money.
yes.
Right. I'm not seeing a need for it, so I would not be voting for that.
Councillor Danluck.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I thought someone else handed me, sorry. I'm not suggesting personally that we would go from the current 5% all the way up to 20. I was suggesting even going from 5 to 6, for a year or two, then go from 6 to 7. My only thoughts, it's been the same number for quite a number of years. It is a user pay environment, so I'm not adverse to increasing a little bit of money, going to say 6%, getting an extra $74,000 into our coffers wouldn't hurt us. At the same time, I understand the idea that it's not necessary, or we're not in dire straits. We don't need to look at it from that perspective, but it hasn't changed for 20 years. I don't think it's going to hurt us to up at 1%. But that's just my thought.
Proposal for 1%. Councillor Mount Gossamain.
Yeah, I think we should just, we should take a look at some of the sister communities that we identified before and match something around that, whether it's Leduc or Chestermere or something like that. It was around 10%. Yeah, I just think it's just being prudent across the board. Tax comes in either way, but yeah, I think we should take a look at that for sure. Around 10% where Leduc came in, I think was, if I'm mistaken, correct me.
Correct. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I would support raising this to something commensurate with neighbouring communities. If we've looked recently at information about how other municipalities nearby, how we compare with them in terms of our basic mill rate, well, and wondered how some of them keep it so low. Well, if we're not charging as much for this as they do, then that's one of the answers, or part of the answer, I think. I'm not sure that I accept the argument, well, we're not in dire straits, so we don't need to do this. Well, when are we ever in dire straits?
Well, I'm going to submit that we might not be in dire straits, but we do have a need.
Yes.
You guys going back to, remembering budget last year, we have a deficit in our capital reserves. We're trying to pay the rec center. We could take that money and put it, like this extra increase, and put it straight into reserves so we don't have big bumps coming. Plus, if you've looked at the capital plan coming down the road, like the 10-year plan, there's some big dollar asks coming soon. So this may be a way to start saving for the future, for lack of a better phrase. So it's the need thing. Just my 2 cents. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yes, Your Worship, through to the presenters and the rest of council. I'm not usually on the fence, but I'm on the fence a little bit here. I can definitely see the comment. It's a flow through, and it's a percentage that goes on the bill, and it comes back on my bill, and it's another way to tax. I've been through the budget. I see what all the asks are there. I know that in your own world you want to pay off your debts before you do other things. We have a hunk of land that we need to pay for that the last council purchased, and rightfully so in doing some prudent planning. Probably this council should look at doing something similar in finding a piece of land in a spot and buying that in a measured way in the future, and that all costs money. I very much sympathize with Councillor Stout's statement around what was it? It was at AUMA when the chart came out about comparing all the tax from all the regions, right? And and Beaumont stands where it stands, and when you look on here and you see the other municipalities, sister municipalities that were directly compared to her on that chart, and seemingly we're leaving money on the table there. I'm not sure if we need to have a vote on this right now or not. I'm not sure which way we're leaning, but one of the things that I might suggest is to pause this and get through the rest of the budget and know that, after we've seen and had some more deliberations, maybe there's other things that have fallen off the budget, or there's other things that we'd like to do in the budget that may more represent the fact that, or the argument that Councillor Hendricks made around, only ask for it if you need it. So I'm almost undecided right now.
Well, I'm still going to go back to that the need is a long-term capital plan. 10 years, we have high capital deficits coming. And just looking at what we have to pay for and trying to mitigate future massive tax increases. I mean, we still have like 2020 Beaumont Sports and Rec, $1.5 million for FF&E, the land. We've talked about maybe we dump all this money into ECDEV activities because we've talked about getting partnering in a business park. Maybe that's finding the land, maybe that's putting in the sewer. And I admit, looking at the budget, we don't have a dire need where we have to do this where we're going broke. But you can always go back to little bumps early, or we can go to big bumps later. So once again, those are my two thoughts. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship. And my only reason for not supporting it is not that we don't have things we could use the money for. I'm not opposed to tax increases generally if there's a reason for that. It's the transparency of it that I think is lacking. And I think it's unnecessarily going on the backs of the service that someone else is providing. And in many respects, it keeps us from looking like we've raised taxes 2.5% instead raising 2%. So if there's the amount, Mr. Harris, of going this way with 1% increase compared to 1% tax increase, this is less money for 1% increase here. Did I get that right?
Through your worship,
6 to
if
7.
you combine the two, yes. Individually, they're yes, and then you combine the two together, assuming 1% across the board, yes, it's less than a 1% tax increase.
Okay, so to me, it's hidden, and I just don't like that part of it. I didn't like this when it came up before, and I still don't like it. I'm not opposed to looking at increasing taxes if we need to, because we have a need, but I don't like this mechanism for doing it. To me, it's a hidden tax.
I'm going to reserve my thoughts for a second. Councillor McGuswain.
Yeah, we talk about transparency. I don't, when people point at us and say, hey, how come you're not as competitive as Leduc? They don't look at their piece, right? It's not like that's transparent in their role. So to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's point, I can't, in terms of going through the budget and then voting after, to me, nothing that I see here is going to change my mind. I'd rather have a vote on it, and if we lose, we lose. But I think it's prudent for us as a community to look at doing this.
Councillor Hendricks.
Your Worship, I like the accounting approach that we take whatever the basket of goods are at the end, and then say, well, what do we need? This is like setting the mill rate on day one, and then going through the budget. Let's go through the budget. If we need to increase this rate till something that at least you can justify it, you can say, well, I got to raise it from 5 to 10 to make all this happen, then I would agree. But if you just sort of throw a dart at it today and say, well, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, based on what? I think we need to get through this package first and then justify the rate.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. But that's not what we're actually just been asked to discuss. We've been asked if we can make the decision now. In response to this being a hidden tax, I'm afraid I can't agree with you. Reading right from the document here, any increase in a franchise fee will require advertising in the form of a franchise fee increase notice and is subject to the approval of the Alberta Utilities Commission, who will most certainly put it to public debate and invite interveners to argue against it. So no, it's as public as it can be. I would say yes, it's a different extra tax, if you like, because that's certainly the purpose of it. But I don't think it's in any way hidden.
Councillor McGuswain.
To speak to going through the budget, I don't think we need this increase to pay for this budget. I think it's the capital plan, which is the 10-year plan, which the mayor keeps referencing. I think it's prudent to save for that. So that's why, like, I would agree. I wouldn't look at discussing raising a tax to help pay for the things that we haven't gone through today. But to me, it's on the capital plan, which is why I think if we either do it or we don't. Like I said, I obviously support it. If we don't get there, then that's fine. But I'd rather prepare it, have the discussion.
Councillor Van Nugert? Sorry, Mr. Harris?
Through your worship, I just wanted to have council have a look at the screen in regards to if we're referring to being competitive with the city of Leduc. We're at the top, which is 21.1, and the city of Leduc, depending on the rider type, is either 27 or 35. So there's two different riders you can have and apply it differently. So they are at the minimum 6 or 5.8 higher than us, percentage points. If you assume that's, sorry?
This is AltaGas.
Yeah, this is AltaGas. This is for gas. Yeah, so if you take the gas and you take 6 times that, you're effectively looking at about $330,000.
So Leduc showing 21.2 there, right?
No, that's us in the county of Leduc. So you have the city of Leduc, which is almost 2/3 of the way down. You see Leduc 2 and Leduc 3.
Oh, sorry.
If I can put my mouse, if it shows up, it doesn't, unfortunately. It's right there in that area. Yeah, right there. And those are the 2 different riders. If you look at 2 and 3, rates 3 and 13 are done separately. And I can't answer off the top of my head what 3 and 13 are, so I'd have to look at it.
Okay. Councillor Van Nugert?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to presenter and the rest of council. When I go to ask for money to do something in the business, I usually go armed with a proposal or a plan, or what are you going to use it for, and why do you need it, and convince me why you need it. I think in this case, I could be more supportive of an increase if we had a plan and if we had something we were going to do with it. As suggested, we may not need it in this budget, we may need it in the future. If we were to put together a plan that said we are going to increase this fee for this much to generate this much money to do this in 2020 or 2019, all of a sudden we have a plan. If we're going to raise the money and put it in the coffers so that we can pay for the land that is due on the interest-only loan that's coming up, then we have a plan. I think just to increase it now, to put money in the coffers for the future, I worry that general revenue starts getting sprinkled across different things, and we wouldn't have had a plan for that money. So if we were able to have a plan for what we were going to do with this money, and it was a plan that that the council agreed upon, I could come to a level of support for an increase, but I would want to see a conversation around a plan and what we're going to do with that money. Thank you.
Councillor Barnhart. Sorry, Mr. Harris.
Through your worship, if I can, maybe I'll let Councillor Barnhart speak and then I will answer towards a plan.
Okay, Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Harris. I just wanted to respond to my colleague to the left here. Councillor Stout, when you said it's as transparent as can be, I would argue that there are people who won't even pay attention to what's happening until they get their bill and they'll see an increase, and they won't know that we're the ones who actually caused that increase to happen. It will be the franchise fee is going up and that increases their bill, and to me, it's not transparent to the average person who isn't following this kind of information on a regular basis. So that was my point about transparency, and I appreciate what Councillor Van Newkirk is saying. I too, if I could see that this was the reason we needed to go this way, for now, I just see it as an opportunity to take money that doesn't have a particular reason in mind yet.
Mr. Harris?
Through your worship, if I may, in regards to a plan, I just want to show you something which is later on in the budget, is under the capital planning for the town. There is $201 million short at the end, though it has a lot of projects in there. But if you were to look just even after the 5 years and you go into 2025 or 2024. We're $14 million behind. And this is page 76 of 91 or page 68 of 81 of your budget package. I believe that the town has to find revenue sources to put into reserves to pay for the future capital that, just to meet our current replacement of future capital, to assist in capital that relates to roads and so forth. And in 2024, which is 1 year outside the plan or may be deemed to be inside the plan of the province, we are $15 million short. And now, we can move those projects down, but still, that just increases inflation, the cost from an inflation perspective. So any increases here, my recommendation to council would be to look at it in relation to a holistic operating and capital plan and put it into reserves.
Fair enough. Councillor McGowan.
Just really quickly, and I got to catch myself because I do this quite a bit, but I think what I'm hearing from you is that you prefer to go through the budget and we spend some time on the multi-year capital plan, having the discussion on on Saturday. On Saturday, once we've gone through this in detail, and then we can go back and maybe revisit that. I'm fine with that. And yeah, I think that's a reasonable request, and maybe I shouldn't have been so pushy to get it done now. A couple of days doesn't make a difference. It still fits within your timeline. So maybe we bring this back up after we've had a chance to look at the multi-year capital plan.
And I'll add to that, maybe administration could spend it maybe tomorrow sometime fleshing out some specifics and not just leave us hanging with the big plan.
You got extra time there, Mike, just to do this?
To your worship, the extra time is sitting in this spot right here.
Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, Sam read in my mind, based on the tone of a couple of our councillor colleagues, I could live with leaving it till later on in our debate if we needed to, but I am strongly in favor of these rates have not changed for probably 10, 15 years, the 5% and 21%, at least 10 years for sure. So doing any kind of increase would be more than reasonable. And I do agree with Councillor Stout that with the advertising program, people will be informed of this, and if they choose not to listen to that information and get a surprise in their bill, that's something we can't control that, but we'll do our very best to communicate. But I can wait until Saturday to do this, but I am in favor of some kind of motion to increase this from 5 to 10 or 5 to 7 or somewhere in there. We can discuss at the end of the budget process, and I'm prepared to yield to that point in our discussions.
Councillor Newkirk.
Well, thanks for the discussion. I think we've had a good discussion here today. When it comes to a plan, the one thing I would just ask or stress is that when we come up with a plan, it's a plan, just not a conversation. I don't know if we decide that we're going to do an increase and it's going to go into reserves in perpetuity. I don't even know if that's feasible or not, or maybe it's going to be an increase that is to always go to the capital budget, as in improvements within the pumps and roads and the capital type things. I don't know what options exist in there, but the biggest thing I wouldn't support or wouldn't want to support as a plan is something that is defined for next year and then just goes into the general revenue in the future. I think when we do something and when someone asks me about this in the future, I want to say, I would like to be able to say that we looked at this. It hadn't been done in a long time. In council chambers, we had a good discussion. We put up the rates for electricity. We put up the rates for gas. We had a look a month ago at all the tax rates in the region, and we are where we are compared to our friends and neighbors. And as part of that discussion, we're going to, increase rates to do this. That's the conversation I want to be able to have with people. If we go that route, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. So, that's just my end statement. Thank you.
Fair enough. So we'll table this discussion for now. Give administration some time to work on it. go through a little bit more of the budget, and then we'll get back to it. Fair? One last comment from Daniluk, followed by Councillor, one last comment from Councillor Daniluk. That's okay. Followed by Councillor Stout. Sorry, buddy.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, that's totally fine. I agree with Councillor Van Newkirk. I'm fine with having a specific plan. And the question might be if we could have Mr. Harris answer for tomorrow or Saturday. Could we, for example, take this additional money and put it straight into capital and make a motion that this increase is purely allocated to capital budget? Now, how we use the capital budget is up to council in the coming years, but I'd be very comfortable with having a plan, as Councillor Van Newkirk has said, and the example I'm going to use is, can we allocate it strictly to capital budget so it's very identifiable and it doesn't go into our operating budget and gets whittled away elsewhere? I'm fine with that suggestion. Can we be that specific with our future work?
The answer to your question is yes. Good. Having said that, future councils can pretty much reverse it if they want to. Yeah, but for us, we can do that.
Okay. I think that was satisfying plan idea, so thank you.
Councillor Stubb.
Thank you, Worship. To Mr. Harris, is it possible to, looking at all the various rates for the various municipalities, and is it possible to provide us with some kind of average for either Alberta or Edmonton metropolitan region for both the natural gas and electricity rate?
Through your worship, in regards to providing an average, sure, you can add them up, divide it, and you can come up with an average. Just for heads up, if the city of Fort Saskatchewan does not charge any franchise fees.
Yeah,
just so you know. So if I put that in, that brings it down to zero. So what I will provide to you is the franchise fees for neighboring municipalities within the Edmonton metropolitan region. And because those are your main competitors, I believe. And yeah, that's what I will provide that and what the impact will. I can also show you on one of the two is there's actually, they provide what happens when you put a 1% increase. It shows you all the calculations. It's only provided by one of the suppliers. The other one does it internally. They don't provide that information. But I can show you the impact as we make changes.
Thank you. That helps me a lot to make an informed decision.
All right. So, if you get any concluding comments on franchise fees? All right, moving on. Rental income.
So the next source of income is rental income. The rental rates for 2019 reflect proposed fee increases identified earlier under users' fees. The majority of the rental income is generated through the Kenyaco Recreation Center and the Community Center. Included in the rental income is the town's lease with the library of $152,100 for 2019, which is offset by a corresponding rental charge to the library. And there's also $47,000 charged to early learning childcare for the use in the Kenyaco. And finally, economic development budget includes rental income as potential sponsorship income and rental from the co-work initiative in the amounts of $115,000 and $30,900 respectively. Lease permits and fines. Lease permits and fines basically are business licenses, pet licenses, unsightly premise fines for weeds, and our dreaded traffic fines. Traffic fines include photo radar fines, which reduce the cost of providing municipal enforcement in the amount of $202,500 to the town. That 202 has been a target rate ever since I've been here. It hasn't changed. In previous years, we've collected way more than that based on the traffic that was going through the town because of NISQ. Recently, with the downturn in the economy and the introduction of the Spine Road, those numbers have been reduced. And when preparing this year's financial statements, we may not even meet the $202,500 for photo radar. But that's still to be determined. And there's, I have to go through and look at some stuff to identify that. So, but I see some flashing lights.
Yeah, Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, you, through your worship to Mr. Harris, just on the rental income, opportunity on the space that we have. It's all well and good to see what our total numbers here, but one of the questions I would have outstanding on this is what opportunity do we continue to have? If we look at the, let's say we have 40 units of time in a week to rent out the CCBCC. What is our opportunity with that facility, and where does that sit at? Are we only renting out for 20 of the 40 units of time, and do we have an opportunity of 20 units of time? What rental space are we leaving on the table in our facilities, or are they booked right full? That may be the reason I ask is because that determines our rental income, and if we're leaving quote unquote money on the table in our rental income, perhaps later in the budget we would need to allocate more money to the fact that we are leaving some rental money on the table. I know there are numerous positions that are coming up, and I just want to be able to justify some of those positions and some of the time that we spend on proposing some additional staff, and then to what end? Why would we want something, or why would we want another person? Well, we're leaving a bunch of rental room on the table in our facilities, and we want some support to fill that.
Through worship to the council. If we can leave that to when we get into that section to discuss the rental income and so forth, and those opportunity costs.
Yeah, I can make that note.
And we can speak directly to that.
Yep.
Okay.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. To Mr. Harris, the traffic fines, the photo radar fines, rather, reduce the cost of providing municipal enforcement in the amount of $202,500. Does that actually go directly into municipal enforcement as a revenue, or does it just come into general revenue?
Yes, it shows up in their budget, yes.
So that's independent of the rest of the budget. So if, for example, we were to discontinue the use of photo radar and not collect any fines, or collect a smaller amount, then we would need to
raise your taxes by 1.25%, or find cost savings.
Yes, service it from elsewhere in the budget.
That is correct.
Make reductions in other parts of the budget in order to pay that. But that amount goes directly to municipal enforcement?
Yes, it does.
So there's no transfer to other revenues?
No, there isn't.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next item on the list is community contributions. So in the 2019 budget, there's $29,100 relating to youth event and library activities, $10,100, $16,500, and $2,500 respectively. Finally, in regards to two last items in revenue, transfer from reserves.
I don't think we can all read. Don't go through them all.
No, I'm not going to. These are all one-time projects that are funded either through a specific reserve or through the mill rate stabilization reserve, and so which is mill rate stabilization reserve has been set aside for one-time projects and phasing in tax increases. The only difference this year was we continually budget the second item down for disaster of $5,600. We haven't had a disaster, so instead of continually taxing on that, have pulled it out of the contingency reserve. And I don't think there was the other ones are important in that you'll see is the co-work economic development and the ASP for economic development. Those are funded for the co-work leasehold improvements. It's $150,000, $75,000 through the mill rate stabilization, and $75,000 through grant funding to pay for that $150,000. So if you cut that out of the budget, you cut out the revenue. So it's important to see that every single item that is identified here is also identified as an increase in the budget. And if you want to reduce that increase, this would then correspondingly come out.
Okay. Just before I turn it over to questions, remember we're going to have a broader discussion on reserves and where our reserves sit and going forward. So just remember that when you're asking questions. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship. And mine is a very small amount of money and probably a very easy question to answer. The very first one on the list, Mr. Harris, engagement opportunities for affordable housing. Is that something new? Because I don't recall it.
Through your worship, this is something that the planning department is suggesting to do.
It's a
one-time
new
thing.
project?
Yes, it's a new initiative, yeah.
Okay, and I can further get that defined or explained when we get to that
Yes.
part of the budget. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Margoswing.
Thank you. A process question. I got lots of questions about things on here. Preference is to, as we go through again, so when co-working comes up or when rebranding comes up, that's when we have the discussion?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say, all these projects will come up.
Yeah. I see them throughout. I see it up front and just want to make sure you're not going to tell me off for missing it.
Yeah, through your worship.
Well, it only happens once, okay?
So effectively what I'm trying to say is this is what's coming out of the reserves and is funding specific items. So yes, the conversation is best when those items come up, because if you pull that item out and it's funded by reserve, there is not a tax saving. So that's the number one thing to remember. There isn't a tax saving by pulling out those projects because they've been funded through a reserve.
Correct, but we're also not, we could be using that for other things.
That is true. Yeah. Yep. That agreed.
Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sorry, I have to apologize. I didn't have a chance to hit my button before we got to transfers, but back to community contributions, a very small point of clarification. It says youth, event, and library activities. So would youth be the youth center and event be promotions committee? Respectively
yes.
at 10,000,
yes.
16,500?
Yes.
So my interpretation is correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, continuing on.
So the last item is transfers from reserve. So the only thing that is shown as a transfer from reserve is the $30,000 surplus that the library has, and this came up effectively 2 years ago and implemented last year, is that the library wants to have use of their budget without any control of the council. So the $30,000 is put in their budget and they can spend it how they will. So that, sorry?
The last thing you said?
So what this is the library was capped at a $30,000 surplus. That $30,000 surplus has been sitting in a reserve in the town's books, which effectively gets eliminated on consolidation. We don't have to get into it. But what the library wants to be able to do, their concern, which was expressed 2 years ago, I guess now, was that they had to come all the time back to council for approval if there's something they wanted to do something that wasn't in the budget, and that is correct. They have to technically do that. So as to give them the leeway to do projects on their own without having come back to council, the council of the day agreed that the $30,000 can be reflected as a transfer from surplus and a $30,000 expenditure in their budget, which effectively nets out to zero, so that they can do a project that comes up at the last minute without having to come to this council for approval. So that gave them that ability to miss that step. Okay.
Okay.
That is operating revenue. So now we can get on to operating expenses.
Well, it's a natural break. It's a little early, but it's a natural break for 5, yeah. And then we can plow into it. Mr. Harris, let's start with 29 operating expenses.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before you is kind of a definition of operating expenses in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. I will not go through them. I will just say that we have council, CAO office, corporate services, integrated growth and infrastructure, community and protective services, and the library. And the budget program expenditures include salary, wages, benefits, travel, training, materials, and down the list. So we'll go first to council. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go off script. So I just want to go see if I can go quicker. So the council's budget, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to page what page is that? That's 24 of 91, or 16 in the budget.
So say there is only 2 pages.
Before you is the
only
operating
2
budget as it relates to council. Included in the budget is a increase in remuneration for council of $41,200. It reflects, it makes council whole with the change in the federal taxing of council remuneration, which up to 2018, there was 1/3 was tax-free. As of 2019, you no longer get a tax-free portion for your wages. So the $41,200 effectively makes you whole based on specific assumptions. In regards to other municipalities within the Edmonton metropolitan region or in the north, there was a email thread going throughout with the HR departments. Only 2 people that we're aware of have responded to it, short of including us, which would be the 3rd. And in the case of Clearwater County, who responded, they weren't doing anything to their fees. And in the case of Lacombe, they were again making council whole, which is, i.e. increasing council's remuneration so that the net based on certain parameters is identical. And those parameters assumes that you guys are at a 40 at the top tax bracket. So in regards to other, we did in 2016, we did a council remuneration review, at which time this new council started with those new fees. Currently, the mayor is 64.5, the council is 29,000, and the deputy is 32. The county of Leduc, or sorry, the city of Leduc, the mayor is 98.5, councilor is 54,000. 98.5 for city. Sorry, city of Leduc is 98.5, councilor is 54. Stony Plain, the mayor is 60, councilor is 30. Spruce Grove, the mayor is 78,750, and councilors, I don't know why they have 40 cents, but it's $39,194.40 according to their websites.
Yeah.
They are in the process of going through, and this is prior to their budget, so the city of Leduc's will change, because 1/3 of that amount was taxable for the mayor and council, and so those numbers will correspondingly go up.
Yeah.
So that's what is in there. In addition, the other increase is the fees and charges. It relates to the Edmonton Metropolitan Board fees have increased. They've effectively doubled. So of that 31,800, I believe it's 26,000 that relates to that. And then you will see community grants of $13,000 here. So short blurb, we can go at length when we get into community and protective services. The $13,000 is part of $109,000 that is allocated for community grants. $13,000 for council. The other $96,000 is in community and protective services. The budget in community and protective services is $116,000, but $20,000 is for subsidy, income subsidy, low income subsidies. Therefore, it's 109. So the total, is 96. Add the 13, that's 109,000. Out of that, currently, we pay $50,000 to Roots and Blues, and then the rest as community groups come in and have been allocated by Community and Protective Services. There has been no change to the budget based on the discussions on the new policy. Based on what council had indicated when discussing the new policy, is that council wants to determine what that number is at budget time. So, not knowing what that number is, it was left at $109,000. For your information, not included in this is a request just received today from the Beaumont District Ag Society for a grant of $3350 to be consistent with the county's grant. Is there anything else? No, that's it for you guys.
Okay, so a couple of comments. Grants, I'm thinking we leave, because grants is an all-encompassing conversation, and the bulk of it's coming up in protective community services. I say we just leave that line item alone until we can have the discussion at that time in consultation with the policy that we all just agreed on, and set some figures and numbers, and then we can pull grants. Wages and fees, did some interesting chatting around the region, and kind of interesting. Every municipality, every mayor that I talked to over the last 3 weeks, and bear in mind this is all informal, they've all voted to make their councils whole, based on, so your net remains the same, except for Devon. Devon was the only one that voted to take the wage reduction, so they're just going to eat the extra taxation. So Devon's the only one that's out of the whole group that's done that. So I'll open it up to comments. Councillor McGuswain.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll ask a really easy question first, and then I'll touch on the wages. Comparing the increase of salary, wages, and benefits expense, so salary went up 17%. Why doesn't the benefits match that? I'm not a math person, but shouldn't that be relatively the same?
Through Your Worship, to the rest of council. So, with regards to benefits, in the past, it was done on a straight 20 point or 21%. In this budget, what was done is by position, it was identified as to the actual expenses. So this better reflects what the actual benefit costs are. So it's going through and being granular in regards to how we treated wages. And that is throughout all of the budget areas. So there have been ups and downs because of that, and so yours reflects an up based on the percentages that were used before.
Yeah, and I noticed it throughout, so I thought I'd ask it now. So thank you. I guess a question, maybe not for budget time, and I can, if it's not, then pass it on. I have no idea where those what those benefits, where they go. I don't know what they're for.
Through Your Worship, the benefits relate to CPP, EI, workers' compensation, so those are what those rates are.
Thank you. Okay, back to the, you mentioned before, mayor at 64.5, council at 29. With this increase, what does that change those numbers to? I think in order for us to be able to communicate this effectively, just by saying, we're increasing at 42,600 across the board, that doesn't, I can't, and I'm definitely not going to do the math on it. And if you don't have it right now,
I'll give it to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to chime in on that. It's one of those things, maybe we should look at having, because I know wages are a sensitive issue with employees and town council, maybe we should look at having a quick in-camera session on maybe Saturday, and we can have a quick look at this and see how it all pans out.
I'm happy to do that.
And then bring it back out.
All I want is just more, I'm not saying you're being non-transparent, if that's the right word. I'd just rather just so that we can see, okay, 29 to 31.5 or whatever accounts have to be.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to hide anything, but sometimes when you're discussing your own wages, it's much nicer to have that conversation. Be able to have it frankly, without prejudice. So don't get me wrong, eventually whatever we do in camera's got to come back out, but in the interest of transparency, but that's sort of what I'm thinking right now. Councillor Hendricks.
Worship, thank you. On another topic regarding the authority versus commission issue that was raised regarding our Leduc landfill. In previous years, we've had notes to readers by the auditors suggesting that personal liability insurance should be in place for each individual councillor. And I believe that there is also currently a council that's having some legal issues relative to a landfill that they're working with. And
I got
So I'm just asking, pardon me?
I got another story too, but
Yeah,
not for
so
now.
my question is are we personally covered through liability insurance? Or I raised that question really at the beginning of this term and just wanted to know if we've got that question resolved.
Through worship, yes. There is a separate council liability insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because I know the mayor of Lloydminster is facing some significant problems due to some issues in their municipality, so.
Great, thanks.
Any further comments? Want to make a motion for the in-camera session Saturday? All in favor? Carried. I'm good.
Okay. So if you go to page 25 of 91, or in this case, it would be 17 of 81, I believe it is. Or, sorry, 18 of 81. I gotta learn how to add. Or subtract. Chief Administrative Officer. So again, Chief Administrative Officer includes his budget and all the revenue. As you can tell, he's a rich man. Communications.
He's the guy we got to be nice to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you have to be nice to him.
Oh.
Communications.
Yeah.
The
Sorry,
town
Mr.
building, human resources, and safety. So those are the amounts. You'll notice that there is a net change of $1 million approximately, and again, it relates to all the revenue goes into the 010 budget, and from there. It's just easier way to keep track of it. And then the next page is the net municipal taxes. In regards to, that includes both non-residential and residential. Very small municipal fees, investment income, again, an increase. That relates, that's the 587. The other interest income, when you look at the total, you'll see in community and protective services. Penalties, so the interest income and the penalties have been adjusted to reflect. That is a case of beer.
Yeah, tisk, tisk, tisk.
For everyone. No, I'll drink beer. Or Mike's Hard
Okay,
Lemonade.
we don't do alcohol on company time, okay?
Yes, that's correct. And then franchise fees, you'll see the increase there. So basically, in the investment income and the penalties and costs, we lined them up more to be closer to what the current charges are. And we look at it on a 3-year average kind of a deal, so they've been bumped up in regards to that. The key in regards to, we have the internal costs in and out. Again, those are internal charges, but the important ones are the other, and we're in regards to salaries, benefits, and so forth. So if we go back, what I'll do is I'll leave it on here, and I will go to my notes. My notes on the CAO officer, the CAO office is really short, in the sense that there have been some readjustments to staffing within the organization to better assist human resources, and that is effectively the increase in wages. In regards to professional and consulting fees, the increase there is in regards to looking at a study to look on how a spatial analysis of this building before any money is spent on the building. So there is a $125,000 being paid for out of the mill rate stabilization fund to do that analysis. So if there's any other questions, I am open.
Okay, so I got a couple of comments before we dive into the next ones. When we're considering these, all right, we got to take the 30,000 foot view and look at the budgets in the whole. I don't want to get stuck trying to, especially when it comes to new positions and staff. I mean, I'd rather look at their budget as a whole than try and micromanage what's going on. We need to concern ourselves with the service levels provided to the town, they need to execute it. We need to be comfortable with the money we're giving them to do it, and vice versa. But before we go on, I got 2 questions. In relation to the town office review redesign, didn't we do a little study this year?
Yes, we kind
Is
of.
that what led into this?
Yeah, that's what led into it. Yes, there was a study done. However, after that study was done and the concept that was thrown out and doing a little bit more research on it, it was felt by the executive team that we needed to do a better spatial analysis looking at everywhere, not just this town, but other locations for staff and so forth. So that's what that's going to include.
So it's going to cover not just this, but like multiple buildings?
That is correct.
Mr. Hills.
Your Worship, Mr. Harris answered the question.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, Councillor Barnhart, before we move on to the next.
Yes, thank you. That was going to be my question as well, because I know the library has put money into their budget as well to look at changes to their space and expansion. So I was hoping that that could somehow be collaborative and, again, trying to work together rather than at odds and be doing it in 2 parts. Can there be some combination of those funds so that we can look at the whole picture?
So, Mr. Hiltz can correct me if I'm wrong. The $20,000 that relates to the library was more in regards to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as opposed to this spatial analysis.
I'm sorry, maybe Councillor Stout might help me.
Say that one more time, you lost me.
So, last budget in 2018, council reduced out of the library budget $20,000 to look at their expanding on their building.
Yeah,
the rationale behind that was going to be part of the master Parks and Recreation Plan. This $125,000 has nothing to do with the master Parks and Recreation Plan or the library. This is about town space only.
Can I rephrase what I'm saying so that I understand that's what this is?
Yeah.
But I'm also telling you what I know from having sat at the library board, that there's still a desire to go to the next phase and not give up on that idea. And having done the first phase of the study, to follow up with that, because we haven't solved the problem of how to build onto the library. And if this space is going to be looked at in a different way, just makes a lot of sense to me to be doing it together. So that's all I'm saying. I don't know whether the money is the issue or what, but in terms of a process, Mr. Schwartz, are you getting my drift? I would just like to make sure that that's part of the conversation.
Yes, and I have had some walking in the parking lot conversations with some of the board, and that's something we'll look into. There's no sense both of us going down the same. And then we'll see who takes over who's building. Makes perfect sense, absolutely.
Okay, so and I have a second question. We're doing a biannual employee we're doing an engagement survey, or are we doing a biannual compensation review, or is it sort of?
It's a biannual compensation review. So there's a biannual engagement review and a biannual, and they go offset.
Okay. My big question on the compensation review, do we find much difference in 2 years? As greatly as it sounds, because like honestly, it seems really quick to be engaging a consultant. Like our grid's that bad that COLA and STEP can't handle it for 3 or 4 years.
What we found that the last time we waited beyond the 2-year framework was that we were out of step, and so this is to keep on step kind of a deal based on the changes. We currently pay at the 50 percentile. The rest of around the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Board, they pay anywhere from the 60 to the 75 to the 90 percentile. So it's in regards to looking at the philosophy and looking at attracting and retaining staff. So that's why we recommend that review. And again, I believe it's being paid out of the Mill Rate Stabilization Fund.
CEO, additional comments?
Yeah, just to build off of that and what Mr. Harris had suggested, when we did our last compensation survey, the data on the 50th percentile is told that 80% of our comparatives were paying at the 50th percentile, and that's our target, so that we can remain competitive and attract and retain excellent people. That has shifted in the last 12 months. It's now 58% are at the 50th percentile, 20% are at the 60th, 17% are at the 75th, and there's actually people paying at the 90th percentile. So it is changing rapidly. I'm with you. A 2-year survey just doesn't seem to, it seems to be overkill. Perhaps we'll do it in 2019 and have a look and see if these percentiles change so rapidly. I don't know what caused this, but it did. So we just want to make sure we're on top of it.
Well, it sounds like we need to do it, so.
Yeah.
Welcome to Rapid Change. Councilor Van Newkirk, questions?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through Mr. Harris. I got a couple of big picture comments, I guess, and then as we start to go through this section, one of the things that I've chatted with the CEO a few times about is resourcing, and what do we have resources for and what do we not. Every time council asks for something to be done or a new report, first we look to our internal capacity, then we would look, if we don't have it there, then we need to go external. When we can go internal and we have the skills here to do things, but they're tied up, it costs us more to go external because council still wants to move forward with things. So I was overall in this whole next section happy to see the addition of staff, happy to see the addition of resources. We can talk about each section as a piece, but overall I was happy to see that. One of the questions I have, of the two I'll ask right now, it's noted that there's a biannual employee engagement survey completed in 2018. Wondering if, at minimum, the executive summary and maybe some more of the results of that survey may be shared with council. In the spirit of this, when you do a survey, it reveals at times areas which may be stressed or requiring service, or areas where changes need to be made. At times you may need to add a staff. At times you may hear that, similar to what was just said around salary differentials in different positions required. Some of that information that the CEO may be responding to would be pertinent to share with council to understand the stresses and the requirements of providing increased service levels from town staffing needs. So that's one ask, is if there was an ability to share all or some of that with council. Second would be the leadership training program under the service enhancements. I'm a big proponent to that. I think that's a great package, and just wondering how far that program goes down into the org chart. If it if it's for the folks in this room, or if it's a next tier folks. So that concludes my first two.
I can't answer the first one, but I could answer
we're
the second one, but I'll let him do the whole thing.
We'll go to the CEO for the first question, and then come back for the second one.
What was the first question?
Survey.
Engagement survey.
Survey, ammunition,
engagement
more
survey.
staff, increased services.
Yeah, just hearing you say that for some reason was making me extremely uncomfortable, because we're really trying to keep the line drawn as far as roles, but your rationale makes sense as well. I wouldn't have any trouble sharing that information, so we can do that. The survey, in a nutshell, placed us at or above, considerably above, most other employers, organizations like ours in a number of categories. People overall were feeling very engaged. The workload, things like that you would expect were identified. And we have put in a number of actions, including a leadership development program as a result of that survey. So, which kind of this answers the second part of the question. That program is designed for any person who is supervising in our organization and up, and it's part of a broader target of relying on engaged employees and what's it going to take to engage these employees, because we've been trying to build a culture of ownership for that service delivery, so this is consistent with that, and it did come out of the survey.
Thank you. I was going out on a limb thinking that that's where it come from, but it just helps council to have that ammunition to know that you've reached out to the people within the organization, gained some feedback, and you're acting on it. And I think that's an important piece to share with everyone who is watching tonight. Thank you.
And there are people watching.
There are, yes.
Yeah. Councillor McGowan, comments, concerns, questions?
Question. I'd reiterate Councillor Van Newkirk's point about staffing, and had similar conversations about the need to make sure that you guys can deliver what we're asking, so I appreciate seeing those in there. have a question around the recruitment methods, the 20 grand for the for leveraging internet and social media for recruitment efforts. Again, the only way to get the best candidates is to reach far and wide. I'm just curious how you got to that number. I'm assuming this is a ZipRecruiter type thing. Like, could you just speak to that, how you landed on that number?
Going back to the CAO.
Yeah, certainly. Well, it's a CAO's area, so I thought I'd...
Well, yeah, it is your budget, so
That's the only thing he's got to do for 2 days, right?
Who we reached out to, I don't have the level of detail, but what we're developing is a page, a recruitment page, similar that other municipalities and businesses have, where a careers page. And with that, we'll dovetail into the economic development page that's going to go live here in the next couple of weeks, so people can have a snapshot of what Beaumont looks like, what we have to offer, what the job's about, and all the rest of that. You probably have more experience in that than I do. The $20,000 is the estimate that was given to us to set that up.
Okay, so internal creating, as opposed to going out and paying external people to recruit on their sites type thing. Is that generally?
The page, yes, the page will be developed for us, yes, so that we can use it.
Seeing no further questions, further comments?
I just have one comment, and I do, though, I was wondering if council had picked it up. So on the bottom of page 19 of 81 or 27 and 91, depending on what you're looking at, basically under 67 reserve expense, that 306, to be transparent, the $360,100 includes $359,100, which is effectively just less than the 2% tax increase. So that has been put into reserves. So where you see that where is it 390? Oh, sorry, I should blow it up because I'm blind. So where the 390, 100?
19 of 81.
Yeah. Yeah. So effectively, $359,100 of that relates to the increase in tax, the 2% tax increase. So 2% tax increase is about 379, I think it was. So there's 20,000 more of that 2% was spent. Otherwise, it's been put into this reserve. It's based on the 5-year financial plan. That number decreases going forward until in 2020 goes into the hole in 2021, 2022 a bigger hole, and then in 2023 comes out ahead, just because of how things are structured within the financial plan. So I just wanted to be transparent with council on that.
Thank you. Last chance for council to ask questions. Process. Do you want us to motion to approve the CAO's budget as presented, or just do it all at once, or just as long as everybody's good?
Yep.
Cool. Moving on. Corporate services.
Okay, corporate services. So that's me. I guess in regards to it, that includes myself, legislative services, office, and again, that's legislative services, combined at the top, accounting, finance, tech, and GIS. So the differences that you see in the amounts is because of the wording, and this is something that I'm working with the software provider. The admin and the GM should be combined. When you change the name of a title, the software breaks it out separately. So I will combine those when we have the final copy. Then going into 21 of 81 or 28 of 91 is the budget. We have the transfers from reserves relate to basically the infrastructure, technology infrastructure. In that regards, and then transfer of surplus related to GIS, and that project has been completed, or is in the portion of being completed. Salaries and wages have increased. The increase is the result of adding a desktop network analyst, a GIS person during 2018, and an asset management person. So technology is becoming increasingly important to the town. It is an important facet of almost all the program delivery, and our citizens and businesses have increasing expectations for our ability to use technology. Currently, we have one desktop analyst that maintains in excess of 750 devices, 165 computer stations. When you look at each station has 4.5 or 4 devices, and mine has 7 devices attached to it. 13 printers, 78 cell phones, over 10 sites, supporting 135 full-time staff and permanent part-time staff. And our network analyst helps the desktop, and also is responsible for 5 phone systems comprising of 107 lines and in excess of 10 business applications, including the town's asset management and GIS systems, and soon-to-be permitting system. I guess that's, so we want to meet the needs for both internal and external customers. Just wanted to give you a little update on that. On geospatial data or visualization, geomatics or GIS. Geomatics supports the asset management system, will support the permitting software, supports the economic development site, and so forth. So we've added, we are up to 3 staff to maintain that. Now, in regards to asset management, in regards to looking at the budget in here, that salary has been allocated throughout the budget, independent of here. And basically, when we initially started it, the assumption was to do a train-the-trainer, and that would have involved our now supervisor of public works. And with the demands that he is facing today, to do the train-the-trainer and to pull on his time isn't efficient. So we're looking at getting a corporate asset management person who will be working, reporting to me directly, but working with community and protective services on the park side, on municipal enforcement, fire and facilities, to bring that up to speed. Currently, the infrastructure is close to being implemented. Going through the process, we determined that originally we weren't going to put in stores or inventory, but based on discussions with the supervisor of Public Works, who started in the process, he's looking for that and some other enhancements. So the hope is that that will be up and running before the new year. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And the material increases relates to the virtual servers and that we're putting in place, such that if we do get hit by a ransomware attack, that we will be up and running within 1 hour. So we're close to that. So there's a number of virtual servers. We can be up and running within 24 hours right now as we sit, but we need to virtualize a couple more servers. So I leave it at that.
Yeah, well, when we did get hit, it caused a great deal of grief for about a week, so it's nice to hear. Open it up for questions to Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Worship. I'll use your own words, technology is important for our town. Yeah. And then you proceeded to list off the amount of assets that we have and that one individual is having to manage that. At what point, do we look at the service delivery there, and other whether it's municipalities, private companies have looked at contracting that service out, the IT service out. How do we have that conversation?
So in regards to the contracting of services out, we did that previously before hiring our IT person. And that is something that is included in the budget, is to look at our systems, and we've started that. I know that on the GIS system, we're looking at how that is structured in regards to the servers and making everything work, and the same with the asset management. So there is a portion that is set aside in the budget to have a look at how our system's set up and moving forward. So currently right now, as we're going through operational planning for corporate services, which includes IT, and looking at all those areas. So yes, it is being looked at this time.
Okay, so you said we did it before, and personally, obviously I wasn't here,
Yeah,
so that means nothing to me. What I'd like to just get an understanding from you is, so if you've got money in the budget here, I see that. So what's the outcome of that? Are you going to do this review, and then do you bring that back? Is it your discretion? Is it council? Like, how do we discuss that, whether we contract the service out or not?
Well, that, and I guess I will, that is getting into the operational aspects of it. It's not at the 30,000 foot level. It will be, it's discussed at the executive team, is discussed with my direct, who I have to directly report to, which is the CAO, in regards to the service provision. So the important thing is that we provide the service to residents and council, and how that service is provided is based on the executive team. Again, it's at the 30,000 foot level, and I'll leave it at that. And I don't believe that it's council's prerogative, and right or wrong, to get into the daily operations. That's why staff are hired to provide that service and go forward. If we don't meet service expectations, I believe that's when council has the ability to say, question the CAO, and if we're not meeting it, look at changes.
Okay, so the last part answered my question. Yeah. If there were those situations, how does that come about? And maybe I'll direct my question directly to the CAO. I get the 30,000 foot, and you're trying to execute, and I get that you've got your budget. I'm not trying to get in there and tell you this person's not doing good, this person's doing great. What I'm trying to figure out is, as a whole, IT is an important factor, and there have been some circumstances where we've had to work through issues. I'm curious as what sort of process, once the review goes forward, is there something that you would be bringing back to say, hey, we've looked at it, and maybe it's more cost effective to do it this way, and maybe it's more efficient to do it this way? Or is that something that we need to specifically come to you and ask?
As Mr. Harris explained, we're going to have an analysis done to see what in our system needs to be changed. Perhaps the operating model needs to be changed. If that then reflects a budget impact, then we will certainly come back to council and say, what, we can't do this, we need this amount of money. Or if we save some money, we will implement those changes, and it'll show up at the budget as well. But as far as coming back to council to say, we're going to change our operating model, we're going to go this route to deliver this service that has not, the service expectation that has not changed, we would not do that. That's clearly operational.
Yes, so the delivery of the service is operational, I get that. But how, well, it's tough because it's, go.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
I got big feet. I'm going to step in the weeds for 30 seconds. I offer up some conversations around this that I've had in and out of business, in and out of municipalities. I have contacts in the IT world and everything else. So I offer up my personal experience here. Owning a company, we had 105 staff. We had 60 remote staff. We had a main office, and we had 2 remote locations. When I pulled our books back open and had a quick look at what we had, we ended up having the equivalent of a 4.0 FTE to take care of that operation. Right now, we have a 1.0 FTE. We're proposing adding another person, which would be a 2.0 FTE, and the operation that we're running at the town is actually significantly larger than we operated as a consultant provider, needing all the same systems and backups and retractions. Service delivery is important to me. I said what I said at the beginning of this, waiting to have this conversation around, if we're going to have great service, we have to have great service everywhere. We have had some service delivery shortfalls, in my opinion, in this room. Sometimes night after night, and sometimes we'll have a good spell, and then we'll have issues again just with our simple camera system here. And I'm not downgrading the simplicity of the camera system, but when we've put a whole bunch of money into something, we hope that it works, and we want it to work, and we want it to be delivering the service, and it needs to be repeatable. The service in this room hasn't been repeatable. So with that being said, I support increasing some service around the IT part. I would definitely support the ask of to do this, run through the thing, and check your operational model out. I would personally suggest that 2.0 FTE doesn't even get close, but I can't. I offer the comment, but I don't know the whole operation. This is just putting my personal experiences and numbers upon the organization as described by Mr. Harris, with 13 printers, 165 computers, 756 devices over 10 sites, and suggest that 2 people isn't enough. I'll stop there. I think I've made that point. Thank you.
Okay, so we're way down, so I'm gonna make the summarization. This is obviously a pinch point that council really wants to see you guys really succeed at. And we're not afraid to put the resources in. Should the second FTE guy not be doing it? So we're going to leave it in your hands, but understand there's a high expectation of everything working.
Through your worship, and please, if there are concerns, please contact me directly, and we will work on ensuring that things are met. And we know that this facility and the camera has had issues, and there's been other things that have had issues around council, directly impacting council, and we have been working to alleviate those issues as they come up. In regards to the design of this room or the system that is here, it was designed on a certain premise, which didn't include all possibilities. So what we're looking at is figuring out those. So please, let us know.
So we're going to close the conversation out on IT right now. Depends what it is. Is it going to... Then I'm going to close it out right now. I'm just kidding. Last comment, but it's closed.
Well, and it's a process question, Your Worship, thank you. In past budgets, we've had the opportunity to revisit and add amendments at the end of the budget or towards the end of the budget. If there is a council will to add an additional 2 FTEs for IT or something else, are you saying we're not going to have that opportunity? Is that you cannot revisit and add to?
I was going to say we can, but I'd really rather administration. I don't want to force 2 people on administration that administration didn't ask for.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but they would be able to come back at the end of the process and give us the whys or why nots based on council suggesting we want to have a conversation about it. I just don't think we should be saying we can't add to or take away. The administration is proposing a budget, but it's our decision as to whether to approve it or not. My opinion.
Through your worship, the intent would be based on the IT review, if there's more staff required. There may be systems or contracting out. It's that we would come forward to council with recommendations based on that.
Okay. Are there questions or concerns on any other topic besides this? Councillor Hendricks.
Just a question, I guess, across all these budgets with respect to the COLA. You've got the 2% COLA package in here. Are we still working with a 3% merit?
On the step, yes, it's 3% per 2.9 something. So effectively 3% per step, up to 10 steps. Once it's at the top of the level, you only get 4.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion or questions on corporate services, and it being 10 minutes to 9, and looking at what's coming up in community and protective services, and the fact that we're ahead, I'm going to adjourn this meeting for tonight so that we're all fresh going into the next one. So, thank you very much for everybody participating.